Hello, this is Red and April, and welcome to our off-grid home build. Today we'll be finishing up the interior framing, working on some venting, and starting the electric. We'll also be bringing you some footage of an unexpected visitor, and April will be finishing up with a tour update of the garden. Well, with the exterior finally finished up, it was time to move to the inside and pick up where I left off with this interior framing. I've been working on this interior framing just kind of as I had spare time in between other projects, and I've got quite a bit done, almost one half of the house. So the guest side of the house, which includes a bedroom, bathroom, and pantry, and also a couple closets, is almost done. And so I'm just finishing up the closet here. Now this is the closet for the guest bedroom, and some of the space for the closet is taken up out of the bathroom. I'm just about to cut out the sill plate for these doors. There's two doors here, one going into the closet and one going into the bathroom from the bedroom. And I had a sill plate run along the bottom. It was the treated lumber sill plate that just kind of ran the whole span of the wall, so now I just needed to cut out the openings for the doors. Here I'm doing a little bit of rework. I actually had this section of wall framed in, and I had to take the framing out, and I'm about to remove this piece of sill plate in order to accommodate the change. So we were going to do just a framed wall here in between the bedroom and the living room, but instead of a framed wall, we decided to do a poured concrete wall for thermal mass. That pretty much finished up the framing on this side of the house, and so I took a little break and finished up the wiring for the evaporative cooler, which I installed in the last video. I then moved on to preparations for framing the master bedroom side of the house. So this whole side of the house will be master bedroom, bath, and closet. But I had to do some prep here, so I'm ready to grind the concrete in order to make it level, especially where the walls are going to be. And so at some of those transitions, since we poured this pad in multiple sections, those transitions weren't perfectly flat, and so I need to grind and make sure that the wall has a good firm footing and flat footing in order to build my interior walls on. So that's what I'm doing here. I also removed the plastic and stuff from that water manifold so that I could grind up pretty close to it and get the pad smoothed out around there. When the floor was flat, I was ready to go ahead and put in the sill plates, so I'm getting some treated lumber ready and to start placing here. I decided to work on this long wall first, so it'll basically span the distance of the house and divide off that section for the master bedroom and bath. And so I'm fitting into place that first sill plate here on the one side of the door. That opening in the footer there that you can see is for the master bedroom door. And so everything on the left-hand side is the master bath and closet, and the right-hand side will be the master bedroom itself. I used anchor bolts to attach the sill plate to the concrete, so pre-drilled those, and then I also used a strip of that foam underneath the sill plate to protect it from any moisture that might come up through the pad. There shouldn't be any, but just as an extra layer of protection. So I got that bolted down and in place, and now I'm moving over to the master bedroom wall. This is the wall that the master bedroom shares with the living room, and this will be a poured concrete wall, just like on the other side. So on either side of the living room, the wall between the bedroom and the living room will be a poured concrete wall. So it'll be nice and symmetrical, and there'll be two interior poured concrete walls. There's a couple reasons we want to do this. The first and most important is the addition of thermal mass to the interior of the house. So thermal mass on the interior of the house is really valuable in that it regulates temperature inside the house. It'll keep the hot days from getting so hot and the cool days from getting so cold. And so you do that by putting in some big, huge mass of concrete like this in the wall. You can also do that by thermally insulating the floor, which we've done. So the floor in this house is all floating on foam, and so therefore it's isolated from the ground, and so therefore it counts as an interior thermal mass. The other reason is aesthetic. We really like the look of a poured concrete wall on the inside. It'll be left unfinished, and it has a nice modern look that'll go well with the home. This is a nice little find. April was on Facebook Marketplace and found a used solid mahogany door. This will make a nice little project for the front door of our house. Well, the framing is coming along nicely. I have that entire wall done, and I've got some of the walls in the bathroom and the closet done. And here I'm actually cutting some small boards that I use to piece in order to create places to attach the drywall to. So that's kind of my last thing as I'm framing up a wall section, is to go in and figure out where I need to attach these little board pieces, such that when I go to put the drywall, I have a place to screw things into. These pieces here will span the gap between the roof boards, and I'm using two pieces of scrap, screwing two together so that when I mount it, one piece will be, or the bottom will be flush all the way along the top. These little spanning pieces will also give me something to attach the wall of the closet to. So I'm going to be bringing a closet wall across here, and it's right in between the ceiling boards, and I want a place to attach it really well, and so that's what these spanners are for, and so that when I come across with that closet wall, I have some way to attach it to the ceiling. And here we are with that wall almost finished up. You can see how it kind of comes across and it attaches to those anchor points in between those ceiling beams. And now I'm just finishing up the framing around the door, putting in the last bit of framing there. You can see the header piece going across, and I'm just filling in that space up top so I have somewhere to attach drywall to.
So Red has been making good progress on the framing. I've been inside editing videos, but it's looking good in here.
Now I'm starting on the last interior wall. Very exciting. So this is the wall between the master bathroom and the master bedroom. And I decided to do a 6-inch wide wall here, mostly because I have this white pipe. You can see right behind my arms. It's actually the vent pipe for the toilet on this side of the house. And I needed to bring that up through the wall so that I could run it over to the side. And so in order to have enough width to do that, I had to use a 2x6 wall. You can see there I had to cut a hole in the 2x6 in order to run that pipe up through. It just wouldn't have worked with the position to make it a 2x4. So just made this a 2x6 wall, and that'll give me plenty of room to run that in. As you can see, I already have the anchor bolts in and the holes pre-drilled and everything. I'm just kind of doing a final fit up here. I've got that insulative strip underneath, and I'm bolting it down. It all looks like it's going to be in the right position. Bolting that down, getting it tight. I've got the other piece fit in place here, and I'm bolting it down, and so now I'm ready to start with the rest of the framing, start putting in the studs kind of one at a time and piecing it in as I go. This interior framing goes pretty quick, and I really enjoy it. April stepped away for a few minutes, and I got that wall done, so when I go back in, you'll see the finished wall. I'm just pretty much finishing up around the door. The header above the door is all I have left, and I'm piecing in the last piece above it, and I'll be totally finished with this part of the interior framing. Yay, the last stud board is in, and so now I just have some little finish up tasks to do. In each place where the wall crosses the beam, I'd like to make a connection there, and so in order to do that, I have to pre-drill a hole and then go in with these self-tapping screws, which are a big heavy-duty screw, and it makes a nice connection between the wall and the beam. Just gives it some really nice support. Also like to make sure that there's no gap between the wall and the beam, and if there is, I shim it a little bit. I also put in these little furring strips here, which again give me a place to attach the edge of the drywall to. That finishes up the ceiling connections, and then just a few more blocks along the bottom here to attach drywall to, and I'm all done with the framing. Next I move on to adding the first vents, and so I need to make an exterior wall penetration here, and I bought some special bits to go through the metal on the side of the house, which ended up working really well. They're a carbide tip hole saw, and they just went through this metal really nice and left a nice clean hole. Then they also go through wood and everything else, so they're really long and deep, and they were the perfect tool to make a hole all the way through the thick wall of this house. Here I am, you can see the drill bit coming through the inside of the house. It's always a little nerve-wracking to make a wall penetration. You want to make sure you get it in the right place, so I did a lot of measuring inside and out to make sure I was drilling in the right location. I've cut some notches in these 2x6 boards in order to accommodate that vent pipe that'll have to go over to the sidewall and then up the sidewall and then out. So here I am working on that vent. So this is the bathroom toilet vent, and it comes up out of the ground an 1.5 inches, so I'm transitioning to 1.25 inches. And then I'm just going to elbow over, go through all these little slots that I cut in. And so I'm kind of piecing that in, trying to make sure it all fits. I do a lot of dry fitting and testing and then kind of do it one piece at a time. But I've got this piece cut to size, and I'm just getting ready to glue that in and get the next piece in. For the last piece here, I can actually just measure down from that hole up top down to the pipe that I've already ran and get that measurement, and then kind of make up that pipe, go and get the elbow on, hang it and dry fit it, and then cut it to length. This actually all went together really well. All went really smoothly, and I'm just kind of doing some more dry fitting and testing here, making sure it's all going to fit perfectly before I make that final glued connection. And I'm making that final glue connection here. I always use a primer and an all-purpose glue, even on vent lines, just to make sure that they don't have a problem in the future. And so I just put the top of this in the hole to make sure it's in the right place, and the fitting kind of fit real nice in that pre-drilled hole. And then I was able to get it in just the right spot and make the connection down below. It all worked out quite well. The last piece that I'm putting on here will actually go through the wall and be exposed on the outside. So I wanted to put a wire mesh on it to make sure bugs couldn't get in. So I'm using some aluminum screen and a tie to tie that on. And now I'm painting it all black so that it blends into the house. So I'm just painting that with some standard black primer. Then I need to put a piece of plumber's tape on the inside to secure the interior piece so that when I push the exterior piece into the fitting, it won't move. And so now I'm back on the outside, getting ready to make that final connection, putting the glue and primer on, and getting ready to put it through and mount it. So I'm pushing it through here, and because of that plumber's tape, I can push hard and get it firmly affixed in that coupling on the other side, or the elbow on the other side. Just taking the tape off here, and it's all finished.
So it's May 9th. We got our chipper shredder in, very exciting. Windy day out here. Red's out there working on the electric, so I'll show you more about that.
Getting back to the electrical now, and I decided to go ahead and work on the first outside outlet. And so I mounted the box on the outside and I'm running that wire through. This wire is going to be on the same circuit as the cooler is on, and that's why I'm working on this first, is so I can get that cooler, get power to the cooler so that I can use it in case it gets hot here pretty soon. So I'd like to get the cooler functional, and so this is the first circuit that I'm working on. This is a 20 amp circuit, so I'm using a outlet that's rated for 20 amps. I'm just finishing that up, putting the cover on, got it all siliconed all around, so this is just about finished up. Back on the inside, continuing to work on that circuit, I'm running wire now to the cooler. Like I say, this is the same heavy-duty wire and heavy-duty 20 amp circuit. And I'm getting the switch box for the cooler wired up now. There's a little pigtail that comes from the cooler itself on the outside, runs through the wall, and now I'm bringing it up into this little box, which has the selector switch that allows you to select between, high and low fan speeds and pump speeds and all that. Well, I was just merrily working away here, and I was surprised to look over and see this beautiful snake on our back porch. Fortunately, the door was closed, so I didn't feel worried about coming up close to it, and I went up to check it out. It's a beautiful red racer. This is a beautiful local snake. They're non-venomous, generally friendly, although they can become aggressive if provoked. I called April over, and she came around on the outside to get some video of it. He was a little bit concerned here with both of us kind of watching him from a safe distance. You can see he's a little agitated, but he kind of went one direction and then decided he wanted to go back and go the other way. Here he's raising his head up. It's such a beautiful, beautiful snake. And so he's decided he wants to go back the way he came, and so he's going back across the porch now. We were a little worried that he would take up residence underneath the bathhouse. We're hoping he wouldn't do that, but it worked out okay. He kind of continued on past and just went off into the bushes, but always wonderful to see these creatures out here in the desert. Well, back to wiring after that excitement. I'm continuing working in the kitchen here. I finished up that first circuit for the cooler and for the exterior plug, and now I'm working on an outlet circuit here for the kitchen. Figured I would just kind of focus on the kitchen and get everything done here. I'm also going to be running a light circuit here. Here I am trying to put in an outlet box, or it's actually a light box, and it's really kind of big for the space, and I have these hammer-in boxes, and I'm just struggling with it. Can't quite get the nails in, so I finally did the best I could, and I'm putting some screws in now to make sure it's fully attached. Every once in a while you get into an awkward place like that, but what I like to do is basically go along and get the boxes in place, and then figure out how I'm going to run the wire to those boxes, drill the holes where I need to, and then start stringing the wire through. And so here you can see I've drilled quite a few holes, and I'm stringing the wire through to get from one box to the next. And so I do this for, quite a while. That's kind of the next stage, and probably takes the longest, actually, is getting the wire ran through to where it goes to all the different places it needs to go. It's amazing how much wire you go through. I might mention, too, as I'm working in this area, I'm right over working in a closet right now, which I haven't really talked about it very much, but right by the entryway there's going to be a closet, and it'll be kind of a coat closet slash shoe closet, board games, what have you. And so it's right there by the front door, kind of in between the entryway and the kitchen, so that when you come in the house, the closet will be right there. It'll also kind of block immediate view of the kitchen, which is always kind of nice in case the dishes are dirty or whatever. And so that's what that framed-in structure is there, is that little closet that we have, our coat closet. I've been enjoying this part of the project. I actually really enjoy doing wiring. It's good kind of inside, out of the sun work. It's kind of zen work. You get into a nice rhythm and flow, and it just kind of moves along nicely, and you can see a lot of good results. I also might mention that I'm not an electrician, so I've done a fair amount of wiring, and especially this kind of simple interior residential wiring isn't terribly complex, but I'm definitely not a professional here. You end up having to run wire along the bottom, mostly for the outlets, and you can run some of the light switch wiring in that kind of bottom run, but there's always a bit that you have to do up top too to get the wire into the ceiling where you want it. Especially in this house, with all these metal beams, I have to go from the wall up into the ceiling in very specific places because I don't want to be drilling holes through the metal beams themselves. So I have to kind of run along the top of the wall until I get to the right place where I can go up through the wall into the ceiling, and then just run in between the beams to get to wherever the light is going to come out. So that's what I'm doing a bit of here. I have all those holes in place, and now I'm just running the wire into the metal beams for the lights. And here I am working on the light switches for the living room light and the kitchen light. It's always tough to know where to put switches. So there's a lot of figuring, like exactly where do you want the light switch to be for the particular light. And so I get April to help me. Where should we put the light switch for this and that? And exactly where do we want the lights to be in the ceiling? All that stuff we had kind of a rough idea of, but this is the time where we actually, kind of cement it in and get it all figured out. Well, I finished up in the kitchen. I'm moving on to the guest bedroom side of the house. So here I am in the guest bedroom. I'm running the outlets along the lower portions of the walls and getting those all in place here. And now I'm back into the kind of pantry area of the kitchen, and I'm bringing in wire that I'm going to be running to the hot water heater. And what I am doing here is using a junction box to make a three-way connection here. So there's several places in the house where I had to put a junction box inside the wall. Whenever you make a junction of wires, basically you want to split off a wire, tee it off. You always should do that inside of a junction box when you're going to be hiding that in the wall. And so I try to do that in the appropriate cases. And so I'm wiring up a junction box here, splitting some wires off, and running it to the hot water heater in this case. So right now I'm working on the wire going to the hot water heater, and I'm going to run it through a light switch first and then to the outlet so that light switch will control the outlet. And then the water heater will plug into the outlet so we can turn the water heater on and off with a switch. We'll also be able to plug a timer into the outlet and then plug the hot water heater into that so that the hot water heater works on a timer. We're wiring it this way since we're on solar out here, and this will allow us a lot of control and flexibility over its power usage.
So everything's doing really well. I planted most of this 2 to 3 weeks ago. So the beans were planted by seed. They're just now starting to come up through the wire, so I think I'm gonna cut it off and bend it down. And I think the birds are mostly digging up around the roots is how they end up killing the plants. We'll see if that works. I need to get the twine hung to let them start climbing. These are asparagus beans, which make a 3 foot long, up to a 3 foot long bean. And looks like they're doing really well. I can't get to the weeds under there to weed them, and the birds can't get to it, so I put some tulle over it just for a little bit of shade and a little more protection. There were some little birds that were getting under there, but they haven't seemed to have really hurt anything, so it's doing really well. Got some radishes coming up in there. Need to thin those out a little bit, and everything's doing really well. The crookneck squash is doing great. I had to get all the tomato plants out of there and get it protected a little more. Hoping these covers will give them just a little bit of shade, a little bit of wind protection. And then once they outgrow them, I'm hoping I can just remove them and hopefully the birds will leave them alone. This is a zucchini. It's doing very well in there. We're supposed to get up to 97 degrees tomorrow. Seems like most of the plants actually really enjoy the heat, and I think they'll do okay. My okra is finally coming up. They are just so tiny and fragile. It just takes so long to get going, so hopefully I can get some of these to survive. Once these squash and other plants outgrow their cages, I'll put those around the okra. The okra are just so slow growing. Lots of butterflies and insects in here. So here's the cucumber that the birds picked off, so I had to replant it by seed. It was kind of a small plant, and I thought maybe it'd be okay, but they got it. So they seem to just snip the stem so they can dig around in the dirt looking for bugs. They don't usually seem to even eat the plant. So just got to protect around the base. And here's the volunteer squash that came up. I hope it's squash and not pumpkin or something. It should be some kind of squash, so I guess we'll see what that is. Zucchini is doing well. It's a golden zucchini. Here's the cantaloupe that I planted by seed. They're looking good under there. I'm going to put some fencing across it. There's a piece out there, some heavy wire to kind of let it grow on top of it since we don't have a trellis for it. All these purple butterfly are back that we had last year. And then over here is my butternut and spaghetti squash. So there's a butternut. And I did get one strawberry plant. Hopefully it will spread, although I'm not sure if this is the best place for it, but we'll see how that goes. This is a spaghetti squash I planted by seed. It took about 3 weeks before it came up. I didn't think it was going to, but glad it came up. And the potatoes are doing well. And then here's my little pepper plant. So far so good. Haven't seen any groundhogs in here yet. Hopefully this buzzer will continue doing its job. There's a tomato plant. So here is my garden at night. I have a couple of strings of solar lights across the top rail. And then I have another motion solar light on the corner over there. So last year I had motion solar lights all around the rails and nothing climbed into the garden, even though it was just a 4-foot fence. So I'm hoping this will be effective.